fantastic. Hi, Clint.
Good. How you doing?
Pal, I'm good. I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm not doing too bad.
You are not doing too bad. You're fantastic. So you are...
He's cheated death, built an empire, and become the face of American grit. But behind Clint Eastwood's cold stare is a life story stranger than fiction. He survived a plane crash and swam through shark-infested waters. He kept entire families hidden from the public for decades. And the truth? He might not even know how many children he really has. From unexpected fame to off-the-grid romances and near-vanishings that sparked death rumors, this isn't the clean-cut cowboy you think you know. Clint Eastwood is a living legend, but what if the real story, the one Hollywood won't show you, is even more dramatic than the films that made him famous? Stick around, because the final twist in Clint's life might be his most shocking yet. Clint Eastwood didn't just enter the world, he made an entrance. Born on May 31st, 1930, at St. Francis Hospital in San Francisco, the newborn tipped the scales at a jaw-dropping 11 pounds. The nurses were stunned. They dubbed him Samson after the biblical strongman, an early sign that Clint wasn't going to be ordinary, but strength alone wasn't going to make life easy. His parents, Clinton Sr. and Ruth Eastwood, came from working-class stock, with roots tracing back to England, Scotland, the Netherlands, and even a Mayflower passenger. Yet by the time Clint was born, the American dream was falling apart. The Great Depression had left millions scrambling, and the Eastwoods were no exception. Clint's father struggled to keep work, bouncing between jobs, first as a salesman, then as a factory worker, and even briefly as a detective in San Francisco. Wherever opportunity called, they followed. The result? Clint spent his earliest years in constant motion, never staying in one town long enough to plant roots. San Francisco, Sacramento, Reading, Spokane, then back to California. The moves weren't just inconvenient, they were disorienting. Clint never got the chance to settle, to make long-term friends or feel truly at home. That constant instability would shape him. He became reserved, observant, tough, traits that would later become his trademark on screen. But they were forged in real-life survival, not Hollywood scripts. By 1940, the tide finally turned. The Eastwoods landed in Piedmont, an upper-class suburb in the Bay Area where his father found a steady job with the Georgia Pacific Company. Suddenly, they weren't scraping by anymore. They had a nice house, a swimming pool, and a country club membership, status symbols that made Clint's life look picture-perfect on the surface. But Clint never fit the mold of the clean-cut, country club kid. He wasn't interested in academics and didn't see much point in following rules. School bored him, and authority figures rubbed him the wrong way. He was held back a grade in junior high and had to take summer classes just to catch up. Then came high school, and that's where things really went off the rails. Clint wasn't just defiant, he was bold. He vandalized school property with obscene graffiti, once even setting up a flaming effigy on the school lawn. That was the final straw. Piedmont High expelled him. Just like that, the clean, stable life he'd just started to experience was ripped away again. He enrolled in Oakland Technical High, but the same pattern followed. Teachers saw flashes of talent, especially in theater, but Clint had no interest in drama class. What fascinated him were engines, music, girls, and freedom. He was already tuning out the noise and tuning into a life far outside the system. He wasn't chasing fame yet, but he was already running from something, and what came next would send him down a path he never could have predicted. After getting expelled from Piedmont High, Clint Eastwood's second chance came in the form of Oakland Technical High, a grittier, working-class school that didn't have the polish or prestige of Piedmont. But Clint didn't care. He wasn't chasing prestige, he was chasing speed, sound, and freedom. At Oakland Tech, some teachers spotted his potential. They tried encouraging him to act in school plays, sensing a presence in him, even then, that drew attention. But Clint had zero interest in stage lights. His idea of performance wasn't in front of an audience. It was behind a piano, in a garage, or behind the wheel of a fast car. He spent hours rebuilding engines, racing down back roads, and practicing piano until his fingers bled. One friend recalled watching him play until his knuckles cracked, driven not by ambition but obsession. He could have been a great athlete too, maybe basketball, But Clint preferred solo pursuits: tennis, golf, music, machines, things he could control, things that didn't talk back. And school? That was optional. Official records are murky, but most believe Clint never actually graduated. According to his longtime friend Fritz Mainz, Clint just stopped showing up one day and never looked back. Instead, he couch-hopped with friends, lived out of spare rooms, and drifted. No clear direction, no big dream, just raw instinct and the confidence that something would happen eventually. And then, it did. In 1951, the Korean War was in full swing, and Uncle Sam came calling. Clint was drafted into the U.S. Army, but instead of the battlefield, he landed at Fort Ord in California, about as safe a post as a soldier could ask for. His role? Swimming instructor. It was a comfortable assignment that let him keep his tan, stay active, and stay far away from combat zones. But fate wasn't about to let him off that easy. On September 30th, 1951, Clint was hitching a ride back to base from Seattle in a military aircraft. It should have been a routine flight. It wasn't. Just minutes in, the plane hit bad weather. Visibility dropped. Turbulence rocked the cabin. Then, things got worse. The rear door of the aircraft suddenly flew open mid-air. Clint and the pilot managed to rig it shut with parachute cords, but the situation kept unraveling. The radio failed. The oxygen system cut out. And then, the unthinkable. Fuel ran out. Somewhere off the coast of California, in the freezing Pacific fog, the pilot was forced to ditch the plane into the ocean. No GPS, no rescue team, no certainty they'd survive the next 5 minutes. Clint managed to inflate a life raft, but a rogue wave flipped it, throwing him into the water. He started swimming, freezing, disoriented, hallucinating. Estimates say he swam over 2 miles through dark, frigid waters, surrounded by sharks, just to reach land. Hours later, he stumbled onto a rocky beach and made his way to a remote RCA radio station. He was barefoot, soaked and half delirious, but alive. So was the pilot. That moment, nearly drowning, nearly disappearing into the sea, never left him. Years later, when he starred in Escape from Alcatraz, critics praised the realism of his scenes in the icy bay. What they didn't know, he'd already survived something far worse. But the most unbelievable part? That wasn't even the last time Clint Eastwood would cheat death. After barely surviving a plane crash, most people would slow down. Clint Eastwood did the opposite. Back on dry land, he returned to odd jobs just to keep the lights on. Logging trees in Oregon, pumping gas, playing ragtime piano in Oakland bars. At one point, he was working at a pulp mill. Not exactly glamorous beginnings, but that raw, working man grit, it stuck with him forever. Then it happened, the kind of break you can't plan for. A friend invited Clint to a party in Malibu, where a casting assistant happened to be scouting fresh faces. They saw something in Clint, tall, striking, that silent intensity. Before long, he landed a meeting with Universal and scored a contract. But acting, that part came later. First, he was cast as a glorified extra, just background filler with a square jaw and a steely stare. In 1959, after bouncing through a few forgettable roles, Clint landed his first big part, Rowdy Yates on the TV show Rawhide. The show was a hit, and Clint was suddenly in every living room in America. But it wasn't Rawhide that made him a star, not even close. That moment came thousands of miles away in Italy. Director Sergio Leone was crafting a gritty, reinvented Western, and he needed someone who looked dangerous without saying a word. Clint was perfect. A fistful of dollars, followed by For a Few Dollars. More, and the good, the bad, and the ugly. Introduced the world to the man with no name. The anti-hero with a squint, a slow drawl, and a faster trigger finger. These weren't just cowboy flicks. They were a revolution. Eastwood had gone from background actor to global icon, without ever really changing who he was. But just as he became a star, his films were about to take a darker, more dangerous turn, and reality would soon hit closer than anyone expected. By the 1970s, Clint Eastwood was no longer just a cowboy. He was a one-man justice system. In Dirty Harry, he played Inspector Harry Callahan, a San Francisco cop who didn't play by the rules and didn't apologize for it. The role was a hit, a cultural lightning bolt. Suddenly, Eastwood wasn't just a star. He was a symbol of toughness, of vengeance, of the American man who handled business, no matter the cost. Critics called it dangerous. Fans couldn't get enough. Clint was rewriting the rules of cinema. Tragedy was creeping in behind the scenes. During the filming of The Eiger Sanction in 1975, Clint's team needed final shots for a dangerous mountain climbing sequence. Two expert climbers, David Knowles and Mike Hoover, were brought in. The footage was captured. The job seemed done. Then, disaster. A rock slide hit without warning. Knowles was struck and killed instantly. Hoover was badly injured. The scene was horrifying, and made even worse by this chilling fact. The exact moment had been staged on camera just days earlier. Now, it was real. Clint was crushed. He nearly shut down the entire film out of guilt. But his crew convinced him to finish it, to honor the life and work of the man they lost. It wasn't the first time Eastwood had walked away from wreckage. But this time, it wasn't just about survival. It was about responsibility. And that weight, it stayed with him. Meanwhile, Clint was still showing his comedic chops in the Every Which Way But Loose films, starring opposite an orangutan named Clyde. Somehow, only Clint could go from mountaintop death scenes to bar brawls with a monkey, and still hold an audience. But behind the action and the laughter, something was shifting. His characters were getting darker, more complex, less bulletproof. And what came next wasn't just a shift in tone. It was a reckoning, one that would force Clint to confront not just villains on screen, but demons of his own. By the late 80s, Clint Eastwood wasn't just an action star anymore. He was becoming something more dangerous, introspective. The tough guys he played were still packing heat, but now they carried emotional scars too. In Firefox, he was a fighter pilot gripped by PTSD. In Tightrope, a detective haunted not just by a killer, but by his own darkness. His characters started making mistakes, showing regret, bleeding not just physically, but psychologically. And behind the camera, Clint was evolving even faster. He began directing with sharper focus, shedding Hollywood gloss for raw storytelling. He took creative control of his work, and it paid off in a way that no one could ignore. In 1992, Unforgiven hit theaters, and it blew the genre apart. Clint returned to the Western, but this time, not as a fearless outlaw. He played William Money, a broken man with a violent past who's pulled back into the very darkness he tried to escape. It wasn't a power fantasy. It was a reckoning. The film stunned critics. It didn't glamorize the Old West. It gutted it. For the first time, a Clint Eastwood movie didn't end with a smirk. It ended with silence. That silence won him 2 Oscars, Best Director and Best Picture. But he wasn't done. In 2004's $1 Million Baby, Clint played a weary boxing trainer guarding a fortress of emotional pain. The film took a devastating turn, one that dealt with loss, loyalty, and the kind of heartbreak that Hollywood usually avoids. Critics called it a masterpiece. It won 4 Oscars. Then came Gran Torino, where Clint played Walt Kowalski, a racist, war-hardened vet, forced to confront everything he hates in others and in himself. It wasn't a comeback. It was a warning shot from a man who had nothing left to prove, but everything left to say. Even the titles felt heavier. Mystic River, Letters from Iwo Jima, Changeling. These weren't popcorn flicks. They were stories about grief, morality, failure, and truth. Clint wasn't just acting anymore. He was using film to work through something deeper. Regret, guilt, legacy. But while the characters got darker, so did Clint's real life. Behind closed doors, the ghosts weren't just fictional, and what surfaced next would drag his private world into the public eye. Clint Eastwood built a career playing men who didn't follow the rules. And off-screen, that pattern followed him home. He married his first wife, Maggie Johnson, in 1953. On paper, it looked like the start of a grounded all-American life. But within months, Clint was already having affairs, some short-lived, others life-altering. And in true Eastwood fashion, the fallout was hidden. For decades, the first secret, a daughter named Lori Murray, born from an affair during his early Hollywood years. She was quietly placed for adoption, without Clint even knowing. For nearly 30 years, She lived her life unaware of who her biological father was. Then, in the 1990s, she hired a private investigator, uncovered the truth, and reached out. To her surprise, Clint welcomed her, but the bigger question still lingers. Did he really not know? Or did he choose not to look? It wouldn't be the last time a hidden child emerged from Clint Eastwood's shadow. While still married to Maggie, Clint entered a 14-year relationship with stuntwoman Roxanne Tunis. From that, another daughter, Kimber Eastwood, was born. At first, Clint denied paternity. Later, he admitted it. And Kimber? She's spoken candidly about the emotional whiplash of growing up as Clint's secret child, once even pleading publicly for a closer relationship with him. As more secrets surfaced, so did more children. At final count, Eastwood is confirmed to have fathered 8 children with 6 different women, a number that surprised even longtime fans when the full picture came out. One of the most explosive chapters involved actress Sandra Locke. She and Clint met in 1972 on the set of The Outlaw Josie Wales, and despite both being in other relationships, the chemistry was instant. They moved in together, and, for a decade, it seemed like a committed partnership. But behind closed doors, Locke described something much darker. In a bitter lawsuit that rocked tabloids in the late 80s, she accused Clint of coercing her into multiple abortions, manipulating her career, and secretly building a second life with other women during their relationship. She sued for fraud and palimony and won a settlement, though she later claimed it came with broken promises. And while that drama unfolded publicly, Clint had already fathered 2 more children, Scott and Catherine, with flight attendant Jaslyn Reeves. That relationship was kept entirely off the radar. Birth certificates were filed with father unknown. Years later, when the truth came out, it made headlines again. Scott Eastwood, now an actor in his own right, has opened up about their unconventional bond. He says Clint didn't hand him anything. No fast track, no favors, just a lesson in self-discipline, work ethic, and showing up, even when it's hard. Clint's next major relationship was with actress Frances Fisher. They had a daughter, Francesca, and shared what appeared to be a softer, more stable bond. But again, it didn't last. Then came Dina Ruiz, a TV anchor 35 years his junior. They married in 1996, and it looked like Clint had finally settled down. They had a daughter, Morgan, but when Dina agreed to appear in a reality show, the cracks started to show. Clint, always intensely private, hated the exposure. The marriage unraveled and ended in 2013. Clint has since found quiet companionship with restaurant hostess Christina Sandra, a relationship that's notably low profile. No tabloids, no headlines, just the quiet stability he seems to have searched for his entire life. And through it all, Clint has managed one impossible balancing act, keeping his blended, complex family mostly intact. He's been seen at events with multiple exes, children from different mothers, even grandchildren, laughing, hugging, smiling. It's not the clean story Hollywood loves, but it's the one Clint Eastwood lived. And what came next showed the world that, even in old age, he still had one final act left in him. While Hollywood tracked his every romance and box office win, Clint Eastwood was quietly building an empire, one property at a time. To the public, he was the gritty anti-hero with a six-shooter, but behind closed doors, Clint was making high-level power moves most people never saw coming. Not in film studios, in real estate. It started with a dream, one born during his army days in the 1950s. While stationed at Fort Ord, Clint would often escape to nearby Carmel by the Sea, a peaceful coastal town with rugged cliffs and ocean air that seemed miles from the chaos of the world. He once said, "Someday I want to live here." Years later, not only did he move there, he bought a massive 15,000 square foot Spanish-style compound overlooking the coast, valued at over $20 million. But for Clint, it wasn't just about owning luxury, it was about preserving legacy. Case in point, Mission Ranch. In the 1980s, when developers threatened to bulldoze a historic ranch near his home, Clint stepped in, personally buying the land for $5 million to save it from demolition. The property was in ruins. Roofs caved in, plumbing destroyed, history nearly erased. But Clint didn't just restore it, he brought it back to life. He worked with craftsmen to preserve the original architecture. Chimneys were rebuilt by hand. Antique fixtures were sourced from across the country. Today, Mission Ranch stands as a luxury inn and restaurant, with sheep grazing out front and sunsets that look like oil paintings. It's not just a property, it's a love letter to the land he calls home. But that was just the beginning. In Bel Air, Los Angeles, Clint owns a 6,100-square-foot Spanish villa, a fortress of calm behind towering gates. In Castle, California, he owns Rising River Ranch, a 100-acre paradise of rolling hills and open space. No red carpets, no paparazzi, just silence and space. And in Sun Valley, Idaho, Clint built a 6,000-square-foot mountain home with panoramic views of untouched wilderness. 5 bedrooms, handcrafted interiors, a private man-made lake, and a barn built for intimate gatherings. It's the kind of place most celebrities rent for a week. Clint built it for life. Then there's his beachfront villa in Hawaii, remote, peaceful, and featured on Mrs. It's a place where Clint can slip away, surf the morning waves, and vanish from the spotlight completely. But perhaps his boldest project is Tahama Golf Club, a sprawling 2,000-acre development just outside Carmel. Not just a golf course, but a members-only sanctuary designed to fuse nature, art, and architecture. Clint helped design everything from the fairways to the chandeliers. Membership, limited to just 300 people. This isn't just real estate. It's a private world built by Eastwood. For Eastwood, each property tells a different story. The mountains, the coast, the desert, the ranch, the sea, but all of them speak to the same idea. Clint Eastwood has spent a lifetime building places he can control. Quiet, private, timeless spaces where no script can change the ending. And as the world speculated about his health, his future, and his legacy, Clint Eastwood was already writing his next chapter from behind the camera. And from behind the gates of the empire, no one saw coming. In Hollywood, silence is rare, and when someone like Clint Eastwood disappears from the public eye, the rumors don't just start, they explode. For over 450 days, Clint Eastwood wasn't seen in public. No interviews, no event appearances, not even a golf outing. For a man who was once everywhere, it felt like he'd vanished. Whispers started spreading. It was an event they almost always attended together, but this time, the seat next to Scott was empty. Tabloids churned, fans panicked, some even began posting tributes, convinced that Eastwood's silence meant the end had come quietly. And then, he reappeared. In April 20th, Clint Eastwood was photographed at a conservation event hosted by none other than Jane Goodall, right in his hometown of Carmel by the sea. He wasn't frail. He wasn't hiding. He was smiling, rocking longer hair, a full white beard, and looking very much like a man still in control. It was the comeback no one saw coming. Weeks later, he was spotted on the set of Juror No. 2, a legal thriller he directed at the age of 94. The story follows a man who discovers he may be responsible for the crime he's been chosen to judge. Dark, psychological, classic Clint. But this time, from behind the camera, where he's arguably even more powerful, photos from the Georgia set showed Eastwood fully engaged, giving notes to actors like Nicholas Hoult and Toni Collette, commanding respect with quiet focus. No cane, no chair, just presence. Behind the scenes, Clint credits his health to something simple: discipline. He sticks to a low-fat, high-protein diet, watches his cholesterol, walks daily, and he still lifts weights. A routine he started decades ago and passed down to his son, Scott. That lifestyle, it's more than health. It's legacy insurance, because Clint Eastwood doesn't just want to live longer, he wants to work longer. Think sharper, direct, deeper, and when he finally steps away from the camera, he wants it to be on his own terms. But the real question isn't how long Clint Eastwood will keep going. It's what, exactly, he's still trying to say. Clint Eastwood's story isn't just the tale of a movie star. It's the journey of a man who never stopped evolving, even when the world begged him to stay the same. From a towering newborn nicknamed Samson, to a Hollywood icon who nearly drowned in the Pacific, dodged scandal after scandal, buried friends, built empires, and fathered a legacy as complex as any character he's played. Clint Eastwood never followed a script. he just lived. His films redefined masculinity. His silence became louder than most people's shouting, and as the decades passed, one thing became clear. Clint never wanted to be a hero. He just wanted to tell the truth, even when it was ugly. Whether it's the haunted gunslinger in Unforgiven, the wounded trainer in $1 Million Baby, or the bitter old veteran searching for meaning in Gran Torino, every role was a reflection, not of who he was pretending to be, but of the man he was becoming. A man who built homes not to impress, but to escape. A man who directed films not for fame, but for control. A man who made mistakes, had secrets, and outlived nearly every one of his critics. And now, at 94, Clint Eastwood is still standing, still working, still creating. He's not chasing a final masterpiece. He's quietly adding the last brushstrokes to a life most of us couldn't even imagine. Not perfect, not polished, but real. Because maybe Clint Eastwood's greatest performance wasn't on screen. Maybe it was surviving the storm, again and again, and walking away with the same calm stare that started it all. If this story surprised you, if it made you see Clint Eastwood in a whole new light, drop a like. Tell us what shocked you most in the comments. And if you want more legends, more untold stories, hit subscribe. We're just getting started.